Hi, and welcome to another Watch Geek video. If you recall my video from a couple of weeks ago about the Seiko 7016, where I explained how it's one of the best chronographs ever made, given the level of its complication, I also mentioned Seiko's other factory, Suwa, made their own automatic chronographs, independent of Daini. Well, it's time to do a video on these chronographs as well, the 6139 and 6138. But first, a word of warning. If you're a Seiko lover and collector, please brace yourself or sit down, as you might get a heart attack. This will be an overload of vintage Seiko chronographs, and honestly, I have never seen this many iconic pieces in one place at the same time, on YouTube or anywhere else. This is a true wet dream of any Seiko lover and collector, and it came true thanks to 3 generous forum members of Portal Satova, who were kind enough to lend them to me, so I would like to use this opportunity to thank them. Like I said, I did a video review of this already, and you can see it by clicking this link right here. But now, let's move this away and move on to the subjects of this video. The first watch that we're going to cover in this video is the 6139-6002, better known as Pogue, called that way as it was worn by NASA's astronaut William Pogue during the Skylab 4 mission, making it the first automatic chronograph worn in space. It has a beautiful cushion case with sharp lines, and it's perfectly sized for pretty much anyone's wrist. The case has circular brushing on top and polished sides as well as lugs. The crown is tucked away to emphasize the fact it's an automatic chronograph, but we'll get to that in a second. The first star of this show is definitely the bezel and dial combination. An aluminium Pepsi bezel with tachymeter scale just screams 70s, and the yellow chapter ring and gold dial do too. This is a watch with a lot of character, and it's really not for the faint of heart. I personally simply love the colors, and it makes me want to put in oversized orange colored sunglasses and let my hair grow long. Now let's go back to the fact the crown is tucked away to emphasize the fact it's an automatic chronograph. The reason for this is because this movement, the 6139, was the first automatic chronograph Seiko made, and is one of the 3 first automatic chronographs in the world, with the other 2 being the Caliber 11 that was made via collaboration of 4 Swiss companies, and Zenith El Primero, which was also used by Rolex in their Daytona. It is a true integrated column wheel chronograph with a vertical clutch that can measure up to 30 minutes. Now for those who are not familiar with the words column wheel and vertical clutch, make sure to check out that video I mentioned at the beginning. So with this, you get a true piece of horological history, with both the movement and also the watch itself being worn in space, and that makes it a worthy addition to a collection. If, however, you find this watch a bit too loud in styling, but you still want to own a 6139 because of its historical significance, you can opt for one of these, a 6139-7060, which has the same movement and even the same rotating inner bezel, but comes with a more traditional black dial and only a small and tasteful splash of color. The case is very angular on this and has a combination of polished and brushed surfaces. This is also the shortest watch of all of these, with a lug-to-lug of only 44 mm, thanks to these integrated lugs, which makes it perfect for those with very small wrists. Now let's move on to the 6138 models. The 6138 movement, despite what its name might suggest, came a few years after the 6139. The movement is practically the same, with the only difference being the addition of the hour register, increasing the chronograph usability to 12 hours instead of 30 minutes of the 6139. So still, a fully integrated column wheel chronograph with a vertical clutch. Now, despite not being as historically significant as the 6139, since it wasn't involved in the race for the first automatic chronograph, and not being as sophisticated as the 7016 that offers a flyback function and stacked registers, 6138 models are the most popular these days and fetch the highest prices. And it's enough to look at them to know why. These are some of the best looking watches Seiko ever made, especially the first one we'll cover, 6138-0020, better known as the Panda. The case on this is just so classically styled and classically sized at 40.8mm that it makes it truly timeless. Sadly, these looks have made this the most sought after model, which is reflected in the pricing of these, as they increase in price every day. But a high asking price on these doesn't automatically mean you're buying a legit and 100% original watch, as these are often redialed incorrectly and sold as 100% genuine. Because of this, I would definitely not recommend it to someone who is new to vintage Seikos, as you might end up paying a lot of money for a Franken watch. You definitely have to know what you're doing when purchasing these, and I'll just throw in two most common mistakes that help in spotting a redial. The first one are black subdials. Despite the Panda name and the blackness at first glance, if you look more closely, you will see the original subdials are greenish gray, not black. The second thing is the dial finish. On redials, dials are usually plain white or plain silver, while the original has a silver dial that has this beautiful vertical brushing, giving it class and character. These two tips will help you eliminate a lot of Frankens out there, but not all, so make sure to educate yourself on it before trying to hunt one down. Then we move on to this 6138-0030, better known as Kakume. This is probably the only watch that's even harder to find as an all-original, with all the matching parts, as there were a couple of versions depending on the market and age, which resulted in a lot of watches where the hands of one version are combined with the dials of another. Plus, these dials are also very often redialed to increase their price. Just like on the Panda, one of the easiest ways of identifying a redial is the color and finish of the subdials. Although at first glance they can appear white, the subdials are actually silver and feature the same vertical brushing that Panda has on its dial. But remember, knowing this will only eliminate some fake dials, not all. This is also the most striking of the 6138s, and it's my personal favorite. The blue in combination with these square subdials looks so good it draws the most attention. I also love the case because, despite being almost 43mm in diameter, looks good on a small wrist as the lug-to-lug is under 46. Now we move on to the 6138-0040, the weirdest looking of the bunch, also known as the Bullhead because of the sticking chronograph buttons at 12 o'clock that look like the horns of a bull. This was done by rotating the movement by 90 degrees, and also the day and date wheel have been printed vertically in order to make them readable with this movement configuration. The color combination on this watch is breathtaking, and I love the readability on this. Not only the hands and markers configuration that is the cleanest of the bunch and reminds me a lot of the Omega Speedmaster, but also the very clever way they tilted the dial towards your face for an even easier reading. Since I mentioned the Omega Speedmaster, let's move on to the last example here. The 6138-3002, better known as Jumbo. And Jumbo it is, with a diameter of 42.5mm and more importantly the longest lug-to-lug of 48. This is the only watch of the bunch that I find too big for me. The size is accentuated even more with this all-dial design, since it doesn't have an outer tachymeter scale. This watch reminds me a lot of the Omega Speedmaster, not only with its dial and hands, but also the case shape, as the case shape and especially the lugs do have somewhat a lyre shape, which we're used to seeing on Omegas. Although these are not the exact copy of them, they are pretty similar. This model with its easy to read dial and hands was my favorite until a few days ago, when I finally held it in my hands and realized that the size and proportions of this are really not to my taste. But for someone with a bigger wrist, I think this model would be the best of the lot. Well, this completes the lineup in this video, but don't think there aren't more models available, with probably the 6139 helmet and 6138 UFO being the most popular of them. So to conclude the video, this lineup of 6138 and 6139 chronographs is yet another evidence of how great Seiko is. These were all produced at roughly the same time, And although Seiko could have gone the Rolex way, meaning coming up with one or two case designs and just changing bezels and dials to come up with different models, they made a different case for each one of these, meaning that whatever your taste and design preferences are, you will most likely find something you like among these. My personal choice, despite Panda being considered the prettiest among watch lovers, would be the Kakume. It was jumbo, like I said, but seeing it in person, it just looks too big, justifying its name. But Kakume, despite having a bigger diameter thanks to the shorter lug-to-lug and the tachymeter bezel which helps in making the dial smaller, looks and fits my wrist much better. This whole lineup represents, to me at least, the golden age for mechanical Seikos. And all of these are something a true Seiko lover and collector should own at least once in their lifetime. Unfortunately, because of all the Frankens and redials, you really need to know your stuff to dive into purchasing these. So I would only recommend it after you have learned everything there is to be known about these. Anyways, this completes this week's review, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe by pressing this button right here, and until the next video, bye.